Hi, looks like I finally got some spare time to work on my rackets today. So what I'll do is I'll customize these frames to my specifications using a couple of applications that I haven't used before. All right, time is ticking. All right, before I get into it, I did want to talk about the frame that I'll be working on. And in some of my previous video, I mentioned that I play with the Prince Phantom 100G. And I've been playing with this frame for about 2 years, ever since it came out. Now, if you go to Tennis Warehouse on the website, they have all the specifications of rackets, not only Prince, but all the rackets, but they're strung specs. So in case if you're wondering what the difference is between the strung and unstrung specs, what I find is on the static weight, let's take, for example, this racket. It lists it as 326 grams, but when I weigh the rackets, the ones that I've worked on, they come out to about 306. So you're gonna be looking at 15 to 20 grams of difference. So if you ever want to know the unstrung weight, then 15 to 20 grams would be a good reference. Also for the swing weight, this was at 288, but on the website it lists at 318. So for most rackets, your swing weight difference will be somewhere between 25 to 30 units if you want to try and figure out the unstrung swing weight. And then finally on the stiffness, not that you can change that, on the average, 2 units is about the difference. So what you see on Tennis Warehouse, let's say, for example, this one is listed at 59. The unstrung stiffness is about 60, but a lot of times it's 2 units. All right, so now let's talk about the specifications that I like in my frames. And this is the one I did last year, my old frame. And typically I like my weight overall to be 320 grams. And this racket originally was 306, so I had to add about 14 grams. And that included the weight in the handle, which was silicone, and the weight in the head, which is lead tape placed at the 10 and 2 o'clock areas of the head. And I like it there because of power and stability. Now, the other thing that I like in terms of specifications is 310 swing weight. So originally this was at 288, and I had to increase the swing weight by 22 units. And again, that was accomplished by adding the lead up here at the 10 and 2. But in this application, I'll be using copper and tungsten. All right, so we do need to talk about one more thing before I start customizing my frames, and that is the difference between copper, lead, and tungsten. So if you take a 1/4 inch width of lead tape, it takes 4 inches to make 1 gram. Now the difference in copper, because it's less dense, it's gonna require a longer length of copper tape to achieve that 1 gram weight. And as far as tungsten, because it's a denser material, it's gonna take less. So I was kind of curious to find out how much weight is in this package, and I ordered this from Amazon. It's the Katana sports copper tape, and in this package there is 144 inches of copper lead tape, copper tape, and there's 4 of these lengths right here, and I'll go ahead and put them on the scale and see what they weigh. So it's coming in at 23 grams. So if we're looking at the cost, and I usually buy a whole roll of lead tape, but let's say if you're just buying the package of lead tape, which is about $6, you're gonna get 18 grams, and it comes out to 34 cents a gram. Now in terms of the copper tape, it did cost $17 for this, and you get 23 grams, so that comes out to 74 cents for 1 gram. Now this tungsten tape, this comes in a package. This is a Tennis Warehouse brand, It comes in a package and it says it's a total weight of 9 grams. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on the scale and see what it actually weighs. And in this package, there's 3 of these strips. Again, they're all 1/4 inch in width. And I'm gonna go ahead and get this open first. All right, so here we go. We're gonna, and yep, it's right at 9 grams. So with the tungsten tapes, for $9, that's what I paid for this, you're getting 9 grams, which comes out to $1 a gram. So you can see how lead tape is more economical at 34 cents, the copper tape at 74 cents, and the tungsten tape at $1. I did want to mention, and I would be remiss if I didn't, that lead, although used commonly in customization of rackets, it is known to cause cancer, birth defects, and reproductive harm. So it's very important that you either use gloves or wash your hands thoroughly after handling lead. All right, now we're getting into it. So I'll divide this into 5 steps. And step number 1 is I'm gonna take the initial specs as is, and I wanna see where I'm starting at for each of these frames. Now that I've checked the specs of these 2 rackets, this is what I have so far as is. Okay, so step number 2 is customizing the grip. And what I like to do is use the custom overgrip wrap technique to replace the replacement grip, and I'll leave the link for that video that I did before. And basically I'm going to use 3 different kinds of overgrips because I know I want the grip size to be somewhere between 1/4 and 3/8, and I know in time the grip will compress and it'll be closer to 1/4. So again, depending on what I want to accomplish in terms of the actual grip size, sometimes I'll just go with 2 layers of the same overgrip, which is usually the Resi Pro, but it is a little bit on the thick side. So what I'm gonna do, instead of using 2 of these, I'm gonna use 1 DuraPro, which is a very thin overgrip, then the Resi Pro, and then my final layer is the Tacky Pro. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that, and I'll come back to you with the specs on the rackets after I finish the custom overgrip wrap. All right, so here's the final product of the custom overgrip wrap. And I'm gonna go ahead and take the final measurement to make sure that this grip is between 1/4 and 3/8. And on this grip sizer, I'll bring it up, but basically I wanna make sure that this line right here is between the 2 and the 3. So I have to wrap this up really tightly. And right now it's right there, so hopefully you can read that. And I have a grip sizer video, so that's also a link that I'll leave below. And this grip sizer is something on there that if you want one, I'll send one to you. You just got to email me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the same with my other racket. All right, so before we get into step number 3, I wanted to show you the specs after I customized the grips. So if you look at this, I have in red type the new specs, and you can see on racket number 1, it dropped 3 grams from the original weight from 311 to 308, and this racket number 2 from 305 to 300. So there was a slight differential in the decrease of weight. And then the swing weight, they both increased by 1 unit. All right, so step number 3 is applying the test lead tape strips. So what I have here is varying lengths of lead tape strips, and I did another video titled adding weight to the head of the racket, so I'll provide the link so you can check that out. But I have lengths that vary from 4 inches down to 2 inches, and if I need shorter ones, I have it in case I need to add less weight. But I basically go to 4 inches as the maximum length. Sometimes I'll double up on the lead tape, but the reason why is that it gets a little unwieldy if you have a long length of lead tape and you're trying to apply it inside the frame. So let's say if I have 5 inches that I need to add, what I'll do is typically I'll just cut it in half into 2.5 lengths. And the good thing about that too is if you ding part of it on your frame and you want to replace it, then you can just take off that 1/2, the 2.5 inches that might be dinged up, and you don't have to take off the entire 5 inches. So 4 inches is kind of where I cut it off at. And all right, so if you take a look at the 2 rackets, racket number 2 has a lower swing weight at 290. So I'm definitely going to have to add more lead tape to that one on the head. But both rackets will be at the 10 and 2 o'clock areas because I like the benefit of power and stability. I forgot to mention one more thing. On the chart that I have here in the blue type, that is the targeted specifications that I want to reach. So it's 320 on the static weight and 310 on the swing weight. I also added a 4th column. You'll notice that there's balance. I don't usually customize for balance unless my customer really wants me to, but I feel like the balance is something that it'll take care of itself. If I add the amount of weight to match the static weight, and if I match the swing weight, the balance will usually match out. Maybe you couldn't tell from the sped up video, but in step number 3, it did take a little bit longer than I expected, and sometimes that's the case because a lot of it is trial and error. So what I did is I grabbed one of my older rackets and I wanted to make sure that I copied where I started the lead tape. So in this case, I counted from the head down 5 strings. So that's where I wanted to start the lead tape on my new racket. So that's where I started. And I went ahead and I started with racket number 1, the one with the higher swing weight of 395. And so I did that, and I ended up with 5 inches of lead tape. And it did increase the overall weight by 4 grams. So I went ahead and I doubled it up, and this is what I came out with. And you'll notice that on my spec sheet that it actually went up to 312, and even though 310 is my targeted swing weight, I usually overshoot it by a couple units because after you take off the backing from the lead tape, it does tend to drop. So I'm gonna go with 2 units for now, and if I have to adjust, then I might have to cut off some lead tape later on. But then going into the second racket, I knew I had to add more weight. So so this first one, I added 5 inches on each side, the 10 and 2. And so what I did on this second racket, I actually started off with 8 inches on each side, but that was way too heavy. So then I dropped it down to 6, and then it was too low. So I ended up with 7 inches. So I have 3.5, it's doubled up. And again, it's at the 3 and 10 o'clock location. But I did have to move it down 1 hole. So it's now at the 6th hole from the head, but they're both matched in terms of where it starts. But you'll see that, one is longer because of the fact that one is 7 inches, well, 3.5 cut in half, and it's doubled up. and the other one is at 2.5, that's double layered. So what I'm gonna do is, oh, and you'll notice that the weight increase on each of them, it's in the green type. One increased by 4 and the other increased by 6 grams. So the next step is for me to go ahead and add weight into the handle in both of these with silicone. And this is where I'm gonna match the actual weight of 320. I don't know if you're wondering why I'm using test lead tape strips, but the reason for that is that I'm more familiar with lead, and since I have all these cut out pieces, I am using that to just initially figure out how much weight should be at the head. And then at the end, the final step, I'll go ahead and figure out the equivalent in copper and tungsten and go ahead and make that the final application. All right, so step number 5, I am gonna speed it up due to time constraints. Otherwise, this is gonna be a long video. So basically, let me just explain what I'm gonna be doing. I'm gonna take racket number 1, which is the one that's at 312, and I wanna increase it by 8 grams. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get the silicone and I'm gonna inject it into each of these chambers. But what I'm gonna do is make sure that I have 4 grams on each side so that it's equal. And during that process, I will be weighing it to make sure that I achieve that. And then once I get all that silicone in there, I have this already cut out. I want to be prepared. I have this shrink wrap. And what I'm going to do is I doubled it up. I cut enough so it can cover the butt cap. I'm just going to cover the butt cap, put the trapdoor back on, and then you're going to see me, I'm just going to hang it up overnight. That video clip that you just watched was actually the second racket that I had to work on. The first one didn't take very long because all I had to do was add 8 grams. But on that second racket, I had to add 14 grams, which was 7 in each chamber. So now that I finished both rackets, I have it hanging here, but I'll show you. That shrink wrap is, again, blocking the trap door so that it doesn't get stuck on there. The silicone doesn't get stuck on there. So I'm just gonna hang these overnight so they'll settle down towards the butt cap end of the racket. And I'll come back to you tomorrow and we'll finish step number 5. Hi, welcome back to step 5. And it is a rainy and thundery day, so if you hear some noises in the background, that's what it is. The lights are actually flickering, so I hope that I don't lose electricity in the process. But that would make an exciting video. Alright, so what I'm going to do in step number 5 is replace the test lead tape strips with the copper and the tungsten. But what I have to do is I have to figure out what is the equivalent of weight for each of the rackets. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and on racket number 1, since that one required less weight, I'll go with the copper on that one because the copper is less dense, so I know I'm gonna have to use more than what the lead tape is, more than the lead tape strips. And then for racket number 2, since I did have to add more weight, I'll go with the tungsten since it has about twice the density. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. When I was working on this racket, I applied the tungsten tape. I did run into a little bit of a snag. I calculated that it would take about 2 5/8 inches of lead tape to get to up to 4 grams, which is what the 3.5 lead tape weighed. And then when I put it on the racket, it actually, the swing weight came out really high. So I had to cut off some of the tungsten tape. I ended up with 2.5 inches, and I doubled that up. So there's 2 layers of 2.5 inch tungsten tape on each side of the grommet. So I'll bring it up and you can take a look at that application right there. I did double up the layers, so it is on the thick side. I'm kind of curious if it'll hold up after I start playing with it, but maybe in the future though, if I use tungsten, I'll probably go with a single layer because this looks a little bit thick. And yeah, so anyway, I'll go ahead and secure it down by using my wheel roller and just really get it down there. The next application, I'll be using the copper tape, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so as I'm putting on this last strip of copper, I did want to mention something that I noticed as far as working with this. It has a very thin backing. In fact, it's kind of hard to peel off, and once you peel it off, it gets stuck to your fingers, so you just really have to shake it off. The copper tape is actually very stiff, and it's kind of sharp in some ways if you, when you poke yourself right here in terms of the stiffness of this. So applying it is, it's not as pliable as lead, that's for sure. So it is a little bit more challenging in that respect. But what I also noticed, and this is because my racket is a thin beam, is the tape is like right up to the edge. So it has kind of a sharp edge. If the beam was thicker, that wouldn't be an issue. But with this, I can see how yeah, having this edge here, probably not the best situation. The other thing too is it comes in a packet. Because it comes in a packet like this, where it's folded up, I noticed that trying to get the creases out of this copper tape was a little bit challenging. I typically would roll it out, and with lead tape you can get it nice and smooth, but I noticed that even with this roller, I'll just do one right here. So take, for example, let me just find one that's really folded up here. So yeah, let's just take this one right here. So you can see how that's folded right there. And if I roll it out, this is doubled up here. So let me single this out. So actually that one came out pretty smooth, but you can still see a little bit of wrinkle. So, I like to get my lead tape usually nice and flat so there's no wrinkles in it. But on this one, it was hard to remove that because of the fact that it's so stiff. So I'll go ahead and just make sure that I can get these as flat as possible. But yeah, I'll bring it up to the camera and show you how it's going to end up in terms of how smooth I can get it. So yeah, it's definitely a stiffer material compared to lead. And the good thing about the tungsten though, it was very pliable. In fact, it was kind of rubbery feeling. So it was a very easy way to apply weight to the head onto the frame. All right, so I think this is as good as it's gonna get in terms of how it's gonna look. So you can see that there are some wrinkles in there. I mean, usually with lead, you wouldn't see any kind of wrinkle in there. All right, so here's the moment of truth. I'll check out the specs on these two rackets. So I'll start with racket number 1 that has the copper tape on the head. And again, the targeted weight is 320. And that's what we got. So we have 320 here. And we're going to take the swing weight. Like I always do, I run it a couple of times, maybe 3 times, depending on what I get. So we got 310. That's a good sign. And 310, so I don't need to run it a 3rd time. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. And we'll check on the 2nd racket. Again, this is the one that had the tungsten tape on it. This one's coming in at 320. And the swing weight, right at 310. We got a 311, so I'll go one more time. And 310. Okay, so I'll go ahead and enter that in. So these two are spec'd out perfectly. Now, in case you're wondering about the balance, I did mention how it follows the static weight and the swing weight. I'll go ahead and check it, and we'll see where these 2 rackets fall. So this is racket number 1. It started off as, wow, I just felt the tip of that copper tape right there on my finger. That might be a problem with this racket. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider on a thin beam racket. You probably want to stick with lead or maybe tungsten, but all right, so this one's now coming in at 30.9 centimeters. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. And this is the 2nd racket, tungsten. And this one's coming in at 30.9 centimeters. So yeah, they start off slightly off, but after all the customization was made with the lead, with the tungsten and the copper on the head and the silicone in the handle, the balance just worked out. Here's something interesting I wanted to share with you. So if you look at this final chart here, I have the final specs on the bottom row of rackets 1 and 2. It's in blue type. It might be hard to see, but you'll notice that I had the 320 gram as a target, the 310 swing weight, and then the balance was just confirmed. But if you look in the first column under weight, under racket number 1, you'll notice that there's a 2.5 inches L equals 4 7/8 C. So what that was is when I did the copper tape, I started off with 2.5 inches of lead tape that was doubled up, and all of these applications was doubled up, and they were all 1/4 inch. So basically what that's telling me is if you get 2.5 inches of lead tape, it'll be equal to get the equivalent in weight. It came out to almost double, actually. You can see that it took, it required 4 7/8 inches of copper tape. And on the tungsten, on the racket number 2, you can see that I used 3.5 inches of lead tape, and it only took me 2.5 inches of tungsten. So for whatever that's worth, that'll give you an indication of the differences in density. Hey, the rain and thunder stopped, but the courts are still wet. Hey, that gives me time to string my 2 rackets. I've been wanting to try these 2 unique strings, which I'll feature in a future video. Thanks for watching. Happy customization, and let your strings play. Are you looking for tips on how to string tennis rackets? Or maybe you're just thinking about it and just want to know how to get started. Well, I'm glad you're watching this video. From buying a stringing machine to tying your last knot, the IART launched a free stringing course, Basic Stringing 101. There are other stringing courses out there for over $100, but why not join the IART for $49 a year? As a premium member, you can enjoy all the benefits and access to all website content. Did I mention we have a new stringing course, Basic Stringing 101? We hope you check it out, and if you take the course, we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed putting it together.